Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world today. Thanks so much for joining us here at PI Mid-Atlantic for another one of our monthly PI webinar refreshers and general topic sessions. We got a really great session in store for you today. It is October 20th, 2021, and we've got our very own Christine Ippolito and Domniki Demetriadou joining us to facilitate a session on hiring in a VUCA world, how to get it right. But before we dive into today's topic, I want to first take a moment to welcome everybody. If this is not your first time joining us, welcome back. You know the drill. If this is your first time joining us, I want to point out a few things here. So, relatively small session for today. So everybody is on mute when you join, but you may unmute yourselves if you have any questions throughout today's session, or feel free to post those in the chat. So again, my name is Clayton Ramsey. I'm the Client Success Manager here at PI Mid-Atlantic, and I'm going to be moderating today's session, taking a look at the chat, seeing if there are any questions that we can answer for you, and recording today's session. So please feel free to do that. Again, welcome. Thanks for taking an hour out of your day to either brush up on your PI skills and certainly learn more about a topic that is probably on everybody's mind in this tight labor market that we're witnessing today. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Christine and Domniki.
Thank you so much, Clayton. So let's do some quick introductions. I'll start, Christine. I'm Domniki Demetriadou. I am an industrial organizational psychologist by training. I am a talent optimization advisor with PI Mid-Atlantic and a senior organizational consultant with Compass Workforce Solutions. When I don't do PI as the core work, and I have to admit, PI has been an enormous, valuable tool, and through all the work that I do as a business psychologist, my recent work, I think, reflects the flavor of the times. So I've been doing a lot of work around working with our clients around organizing and reorganizing or restructuring to meet new challenges or current business demands. A lot of work around individual, team, and organizational capability assessments and team building in order to meet, business objectives. Also a lot advising clients on talent acquisition strategies. In my past life, I did a whole lot of that. And in some challenging employer, and employee markets. And finally, I think the more recent trend is more focused on onboarding, how to do it right, how to coach critical new hires through the first 90 to 180 days in order to have a smooth transition and bring them up to efficiency as quickly as possible, acclimate and acculturate them in the right way. So with that said, Christine, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some of you. I'm Christine Ippolito. I'm the founding principal of Compass Workforce Solutions. I think I would classify myself as a true generalist. Over the last 18 months or so, I feel like I've been embroiled in everything COVID, from helping organizations downsize and furlough, then bringing people back and designing processes and procedures to facilitate that. We joined the PI Mid-Atlantic team in October of 2018, and it's been a great enhancement to our practice. We work with businesses and really look at their operational controls, their compliance, their conflict resolution, and then employee assessment, engagement, and team evaluation using the PI. So our focus is really on HR practices that bring value to the business. As a business owner, I look at everything through the lens of what value can we bring to the table and why are we going through this particular exercise or process or procedure. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Domniki, why don't you go ahead and dive in?
Okay, and we have quite a bit to cover today. We're going to kind of speed forward a little bit, and certainly if there are questions that come up, note them in chat, jot them down. We will allow time at the end because we recognize there is a lot of territory to be covered today. Really, during our time together, we want to set the stage a little bit, talk about this VUCA world, right? This volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment we're operating in, see what impact top level it's been having in the world of work, and then kind of use the 4 stages of hiring to kind of go through some best practices that are still in play, some things that we need to rethink about, how to rethink how we hire, how we build talent pools, how we describe the jobs, how we set our sourcing strategies, how we build our pools, how we select the right candidate from those pools, and how do we ultimately close and seal the deal and onboard them in an effective way. Along the way, we will mention and highlight for you in the presentation. I assume Clayton will be sharing this after our session, making it accessible to you. We'll share some tools and resources that you can lean on in order to get either templates or information. And as I mentioned at the end, we will allow some time to address any specific questions or challenges that you're facing, or any area that we talked about, but you would like to dive a little deeper. So let's talk a little bit about what is this environment we're operating in. The reality is, if we objectively look at things, there were shifts happening in the world of work before the pandemic. But then talking about unpredictable, the pandemic had. Who would have expected that, right? So the pandemic has created both, all 4 elements of what that is encompassed under VUCA. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, a lot of areas that are at play, it's a universal thing, and it's also very ambiguous. We really don't know what will happen next, particularly when we're in the midst of it. So what the pandemic has done, it has accelerated the rate of change, the speed with which we were forced to adopt changes that we were thinking about. I mean, a little bit, there was some remote options out there, but the pandemic and the shutdown made that a must-have in order to continue operating. So where we work, when we work has been shifted and continues to shift. We don't expect that this will change. As a matter of fact, 70% of people surveyed, employed individuals surveyed, say that they would prefer to continue in a remote capacity, whether it's full-time or in a hybrid world, if that was an option. You can't ignore that trend as an employer. When we work, work life and personal life, the boundaries have blurred. We work from home, so we're parents, we're spouses, we are children, and we are workers. So when we work, really what's happening around our world dictates when we get our work done. So sensitivity, also communicating across the globe, has forced us to work at hours that allow that remote collaboration. Also, how we get work done has continued to shift and radically changed in many ways. How we connect with each other. We were just talking with Clayton as we were starting this webinar. Zoom existed before the pandemic. People were so surprised that we had to do this. People were excited that they knew how to actually do a Zoom call. But it wasn't new technology. It was just that it was thrusted and forced upon us, and we were forced to adopt it to get work done. Also, think of skill sets were stretched or altered. Think of your outside sales people, your technical field sales. They could no longer do on-site visits, to prospects or clients. They had to reinvent how they sell by not being face-to-face. Or not being physically present. They could be face-to-face via video, which is a very different experience. At the same time that the world of work has shifted, it also, what matters to individuals shifted, right? In a VUCA world, what we've seen and what research shows is that It causes people to have anxieties. They're stressed about that ambiguity and the complexity and the uncertainty. It takes a toll. It takes a toll on your emotional well-being. It takes a toll on your motivation to keep working and being engaged. It also kind of frustrates you because you see your career stalled or thwarted because everything's shut down. It also makes you question, do I have the right skills? Will my skills be still relevant? Do I need to upskill or completely choose a different field because my skills will be obsolete? At the same time, there is the notion, the person who coined the Great Resignation, the psychologist from Texas A&M, also talked about pandemic epiphanies. Not only how we work has changed, but also those individuals realize that there's more to life. Life is precious. Life could be interrupted at any point, which made them pay attention to different things. For all of us who do interviews, I think, and especially initial interviews with candidates, if we pay attention to the questions that are being asked by applicants, they are very different questions than what there was 2 years ago. People want to know about different things nowadays that evolve around how do they, what's important to them, what's important to their lives, their values, and the meaning they assign to work. At the same time, this environment has also brought focus to skills that are different than your traditional skills. Sure, the functional competencies are still the same. Some of the behavioral, skills are still the same. But one has risen as a superpower, if you may. Learning agility has become a critical component. It's not enough that you have people who are great at planning and great at executing. They also have to be very much in tune in what is happening in the world and being able to pivot. You need people in the workforce who are able to learn, unlearn, and relearn because of the uncertainty, because of the unpredictability. You don't know what you're doing today. Will it hold true for tomorrow? If you think you're alone in having difficulty and challenges in hiring, absolutely, I know it doesn't make it better, but definitely should bring comfort that you're not alone. I think we're talking about talent shortages a lot. Many scientists are talking about a major reassessment of work in America, that we need to be in tune. And as much as we expect learning agility as a critical skill from our people and our teams, at the same time, we need that learning agility at an organizational level, and in hiring in particular, where best practices have been the same all along, and we've been practicing them for many, many decades. Now we need to start being open to testing assumptions, to challenging what we've been doing, to paying attention about what the world and the candidates demand of us, and being able and flexible to, and to adapt and change. So in order to kind of talk about what is staying true to practice, based on past, practices, and what is called into question, we're going to use the framework of the 4 stages of hiring to do so, just to bring some organization and structure to things. And if we think of the hiring process, there are 4 main stages. There's the definition stage, where we really define what the need is and what the job requires, what needs to get done, what it takes to do it. Then we go into a preparation, phase. And this is the one that we tend to skip. This is the one that we have a need and we dive into. Great, I've been told I have a need today, I'm posting tomorrow. This is the one that really is the one that could hurt the most not doing it right. So spending time in what will be shared when and how, thinking where your target candidates are, and what will the process be that you're going to put them through is really, really important. That if you put that in place and you do it well, the rest should be a breeze. The screen and select is really taking that strategy and executing it, determining how your candidates stack up against established criteria. And last but not least, you are talking about offer and onboarding. So once you identify it, what else do I need to know to onboard them from a compliance or a fact checking, or a skill checking perspective? And how will I onboard them to ensure they are successful? Because finding the right hire and having the right hire operate usually are not necessarily the same things. And as we know in PI, people often fail and fail within the first 18 months on the job if you don't get it right and you don't onboard them right. And all along, as you do that process, you also need to be empathetic from the candidate perspective. You can think what's right for me, what's good for me, what do I want, but also how will it be received by my target candidates? Because if they're not along for the ride, then you're not going to get the results that you need. So the first step in the hiring process is that definition stage. And here we talk about the onerous task of, and the boring task, I have to admit, of job descriptions. They're not the most exciting and sexy thing in HR. And we usually, put it at the bottom of the pile if we can. The pandemic for our clients was a great opportunity for us to say, since you have downtime, this is a good time to take your job descriptions and refresh them because you haven't looked them in a long time. So this is the stage where you look about, what does the person in the role actually do, and within what context. So here, this is there are two elements to this. There is the job description or the job specifications and the person specifications. Let's talk about the job description or the job specifications. Here, you're talking about some best practices that still hold true. I mean, there are certain practices that are timeless. You still want to make them sure that they accurately reflect the current job duties and responsibilities. They can be stale and they can be future looking for something that doesn't exist yet. It has to describe the present moment. Don't write them on the basis of the person you want to hire. There's a tendency sometimes we know the right hire, but it doesn't quite fit the job description. So let's create a new role just for them. That will really throw your whole HR process probably off, because the job description is the foundation of everything that we do in HR, from setting compensation properly, from performance management, from talent management, as well as the recruitment process, the hiring and selection process. So it's really important that you get it right for the need that you actually have. Also, there's not always going to be a need to have a well-written and well-organized job description. There's nothing worse than giving a new employee on day one a job description that's just a laundry list of random tasks. What is becoming more imperative, I think, under the current volatile and uncertain and ambiguous environment is to update them frequently. They can't stay stale. Think about pandemic. You downsized, you reshaped roles, you eliminated roles, you combined roles. Are there job descriptions in place for that? How do people know what they're supposed to be doing? Also, as you approach it, often the approach was be detailed, include everything that the person is expected to do, because that's the only way you can performance manage it. I would recommend that you start big. Think about your key accountabilities. Think about, key responsibilities within those accountabilities the person needs to do. Don't get bogged down too much in the how and what work gets done, because your tools may change, which causes you to go unnecessarily to go and have an updated, or makes your descriptions obsolete. How they do it, how they sell, whether they do it in person or whether they do it, via Zoom. It's up to the individual to deliver. Think more about what needs to be accomplished rather than how exactly you expect people to accomplish it. There is a method to the madness in job descriptions to be compliant. Certainly there's a compliance piece to this. In terms of tools and resources, SHRM is always a good trusty resource. There are two links there. One is to a good compliant template. Another one is to a how-to guide to write your job descriptions. Now, if you have a new role, because with the pandemic, we reinvented a lot of what we did, or we combined things. And you don't know where to start. A good source is either the occupational handbook, although I don't know how frequently this gets updated. Another great suggestion is to use job boards. use the location that you're in, type, the kind of type of role that you're thinking of needing a job description, and see what comes up, and pay particular attention to your competition. How do they define those roles? And use that as a springboard to craft what your particular need within your organization is in terms of what the work that needs to be done to accomplish your objectives. The second piece to the definition of part of the hiring process is the person specifications. And here is where we start describing what does it take for the job to get well done. What does a person need to possess in order to execute on the charge that we have for them? And here we're looking at things like the traditional things, right? Education, experience, and KSAOs, the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. And under that category, we're talking about certification, you're talking licenses, you're also talking about competencies here, work or functional competencies, what's job related, like finance, or engineering, and general or core behavioral competencies, which is what we refer to as soft skills. Some people now start to talk them about the human or super skills. Typically, always good practice to separate your must-haves by nice-to-haves. In the current environment, though, because you use your specs to qualify people, approach them with a mindset of inclusion, opening the funnel or the pool of who you can include versus how many people I can exclude. So here, being very crisp, clear in your mind of what are your must-haves, critical success factors, and what are the nice-to-haves, the preferred, the desired. The hiring managers always have this tendency to give you a laundry list and say, oh, I want them to do this, or I want them to have like, kind of strategic thinking. And the question then is, does this role have a strategic focus? Why do we need that? This is the opportunity for you to go and challenge the assumptions. They have to be specific, they have to be relevant and justifiable, whatever specs you include, and measurable, because that's what's going to guide you how you're going to assess them. But be critical about what you include here. Education, if you have an administrative position, bachelor's degree required. Why? What does that bring to the table to make that person successful? X number of years of X year of experience. What's magical about that number? Is it the years of experience, or is it what they accomplished, or is it what skills they developed during their experience? Even industry, we always like to think that we're so unique and compared to other industries, but the world has become much more project-based, much more cross-functional. Things are transferred, certain skills, particularly the core, the behavioral or general skills that undermine success, if you don't have them, are transferable. Have you, look about what people bring from other industries that you could easily transfer to your own if you can train on the functional or kind of upskill on the functional side. So when you think about, specs to include, and you want to double check whether you are aligned with what the norm is, certainly, job boards and looking for other postings, the ONET occupational handbook, a good source. But also when you write your tools, don't forget to lean on your PI. Your PI job assessment, definitely make your hiring team go through that exercise. It reveals so much about what success is all about and how people view it and approach it, and allows you to have consensus before you even go out to search for the right people internally to agree that, yes, this is what we need to be successful. Here also, PI team analytics are a great place to look if you have the luxury, because you may want to target people who close gaps in the patterns or behavioral profiles that you have, or the capabilities that you have from the people already on the team. Are there people that need to bring innovation in our very structured, process-driven organization, or vice versa? because that will be very telling and allow you to hone in what element of success and also expand your organizational capabilities by bringing this additional tool, this additional profile in. So the next step is to start your preparation. Once you define what you need, you start your preparation. And here's when you start to craft your job ad or your job post. Now, a job description is internal. A job ad is external facing. We often use those terms interchangeably, and it's okay to use the terms interchangeably, but please do not use the documents interchangeably. I recently had that experience. We're working with a group that decided, you know, it was an agency, and they're like, need a job description, and we gave them one. Next thing I know, the whole job description appears on their career site and or their job site. And I was like, no, take that down, because that is not what you market to people. That is not how you create interest and kind of tell people, get people excited about what it is that you have to offer them. And to give you an example, and it's, you know, rather short example. So this is a rather short for the level job description. Originally was 4 pages, we pared it down to 3 pages. Here is all the HR-ish stuff, right? It's the opening where it tells you the classification of the job and the organizational structure, the scheduling. Then it tells you about the work environment, the physical requirements that are, you know, necessary. And in between, you talk about the essential functions of the job. Here, it was important for us to organize it. If you go through, remember back to the job description, key accountabilities, major responsibilities, or major tasks underneath those, just to kind of not have a laundry list of tasks, as well as the position qualifications, whether it's competencies, education, experience, or other skills that you're looking for. In contrast with that, you have a job posting, which is less than a page long. Really, it's distilling what this is all about and creating some excitement about the opportunity that the person would have. So here, as you can see, there is a section that doesn't exist in the job description, which is about us. A little brief blurb about who the company or the organization is, and it doesn't have to be long. It's about the role. Why does the role exist? What's the value of this role to the organization? And then what are your key areas of accountability? And within that, you don't need to list the whole bucket list. Just write a summary of what this is all about in each of the key areas of accountability. And when it comes into the requirements, what the key success factors, hone in on the absolute must-haves. Here, you really want the things that are non-negotiable for you. And this is really important, and I'll tell you why in a second, why you want to keep that short. Also, the last paragraph is leaning into the job profile that was created and gives not only the actual hard skills or specific experiences, but also gives a graphic description of, and I apologize about that, you know, gives a description about what the behavioral profile of the successful person will look like, because we want to make sure that the right people apply for the job that match what the organization needs. When you think about job descriptions, in this case, job description is referring to a job ad. LinkedIn had a piece of research that they put out there that it was pre-pandemic, in full disclosure, but my experience, even during the pandemic up to now, holds absolutely true. Things that are most important to individuals when they look at a job description, and they did a heat map for that. Compensation was number 1, followed by qualifications and job details. So really, if you think about it, it makes absolute heuristic sense for the candidate who wants to invest their time wisely, because they're vetting you as much as you're vetting them. Not mentioning compensation puts you behind the 8 ball relative to competition that does, because candidates will more likely apply to ones that they know upfront what the salary range is or what the target compensation is. and they will shy away from investing time in things that they are not sure about. They're probably going to go at the bottom of the list. So it's an ante to get in the game, so to speak. And some sites will tell you that it really hurts you not to have a salary range. And it's okay if you're not the most competitive. You know, all you need to do is allow candidates to have a sense up front of what it's all about. Then the next thing that they look at is, do I qualify for the job, which is a rational thinking process. And then it's like, what kind of work I'll be doing? Do I want to do that work? And then it's all about the company and everything else. So the critical elements of crafting a job position is your title. It's probably one of the most critical ones because you have to think like a candidate. This is what they search. Title and location is what people will enter in any job board to find your job. So getting that right is really important. And here, remember that the internal title that you have on your job description does not have to be the same as your outward facing or external title that you go out in the market with. So if you have generic job family titles like analyst, analyst 1, analyst 2, senior, junior, that's fine for internal purposes and grading and compensation purposes and talent management, but it's not okay when you go out in the market, because people don't search for just analysts. They may look for financial analysts, for business analysts, for HR data analysts. You need to come more specific to capture the nature of the role. Locations and hours are the second critical piece, because as we said, title and location is what people look at. Purpose, of the job. Why does it exist? What's the responsibilities? What do I need to be successful? And who are you? Really, those are the questions candidates are looking to get answered. Best practices, some of them timeless. Keep your job title straightforward. Try to avoid kind of the ninja developer, the kick-ass, kind of web designer. Those terms really hurt you. They don't create the excitement that some recruiters think it does. Be clear and concise. Less is more. There's research on LinkedIn. You can certainly kind of look that up, but it says about 150 to 200 words is really, gets 18% more applies than descriptions that are 300 or more words. So obviously less, to the point, really communicates very crisply what you need and what you're looking for and what you have to offer. Focus on job accountabilities. Certainly in the current volatile and ambiguous environment, requirements for the job and the pay. Really, if there are two things to walk away remembering to increase your applies and increase the matches, is do include those and be very clear and crisp on the must-haves and what you're willing to compensate for those. Make it personal, but not too cheeky or casual. Research shows that hurts you, including little jokes, including little puns, not good. Use gender neutral words for greater diversity, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This is also linked with requirements. The more requirements you put in a job, in your job posting, the less you're going to deter females from applying. There is very good cumulative research that shows that women, in order to apply to job posts, they have to have a high degree of certainty that they check off all the boxes on the requirements. So even if you have like preferred or ideal, they will self-assess and self-select out rather than give it a shot like a male candidate would. Male candidates really, they read it, that sounds pretty good. I have half of it, I'll apply. Women, not so much. The same with wording. I think in the Western world, we use certain words that have a very dominant masculine connotation, like leader, kind of authoritatively advise, kind of analyze. Those are very traditionally male-oriented words. So having an excess of those words could hurt the propensity of females applying to your posting. Definitely in the current environment, they be very clear about the work location and schedule. By far, after the first question I get when I get on the phone with candidates is they drive the call, first of all, and the first thing they ask is like, I just want to confirm, is this a virtual or remote, kind of work? Or is it a hybrid work? And if it's hybrid, how much in the office, how much remote? And what's the schedule? Is there flexibility in the schedule? Those are the questions that we need to be ready to address, whether it's on print or whether it's when we get on the phone to talk to individuals. Some tools that you can use to craft your job, include the job target, kind of using that behavioral profile wording. PI Mid-Atlantic on the resources has a keyword to attract the right person. There's the PI job analyzer. If you want to make sure you're talking to the right people, run your ad through that. And there's a gender decoder that you can run. It's free. You can run your ad and tells you whether it's masculine or feminine slanted. I'm sorry, Clayton.
Oh, no, those are great tools. And actually, I wanted to chime in with that PI job target. So for those that are using the platform, there's a section in the job report. So once you develop the job target in the predictive index software, go to the job report. There is a section called They Will Like Hearing, and it provides you verbiage to use in that job ad that'll attract the types of individuals that you're looking for from a behavioral perspective. But on the other side, I also had a question in here, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask. It seemed like it might be from Tracy. I'm finding that benefits are more important than ever in this market. Are companies making shifts in what they offer beyond medical and PTO, and are they advertising that in the job ads?
It's a great question. I just saw the time clock, though. Can we defer that? Is it okay if we park it towards the end?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And that's a great question for you, Christine, for sure. So I'm going to kind of speak forward in some examples here. This is an example of what the PI job analyzer results are going to look like when you run your ad. It's going to tell you what profiles you're targeting. And this is what the job decoder will spit out when you run your job ad, right? So this is, it's going to tell you this particular ad that we had, which kind of served our needs. We were targeting, wanted more, to solicit more females to apply. So it was more feminine coded words than masculine coded words. And everything turned out just beautifully and on target. I was glad to see. Set and execute sourcing strategies, the next thing that you need to do. Here, in the current environment, you really want to be in tune with your market. You really need to know what your supply and demand is. You need to look at what's happening in your world, how much competition you have for the same talent. It's not enough to just kind of go the traditional way. Oh, got an opening, put it on ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, Indeed, and wait for people to flood the gates. No, it's not going to happen. You need to, first of all, look internally. You need to advertise internally, even before you go externally. Look at your current talent. Can I upskill? Can I reskill? Are there people who are almost ready, if not ready, to move into that role? Also activate passive search and always be networking in the community. Kind of think outside the box, engage with nonprofits, engage with church groups, engage with schools. Even some government agencies have done things like drive-through and pop-up job fairs, right? It's like you have to be really creative, given the spirit of the times and how uncomfortable people feel about, attending closed, space events. If you don't find your talent internally, say, is it necessary if you don't find the talent in your locality? Is it necessary to be in the office? I mean, this is where you challenge your assumptions again. Can I open it up to a geography that is more reasonable, or it's wherever? Sometimes if you can find the right people, you may want to think about potential rather than credential. If you can find what it is, say, How much will it take to bring them up to speed? And can I hire for the potential and invest in their development, which is a long-term retention? It's kind of like your antidote to the great, resignation. It's a great retention tool. Use analytics when you post, and what you do usually will say, oh, I'll do it Friday. I'll post from Friday for the weekend. No, people don't anymore look at job postings or search over the weekend. Usually early in the week is much better to kind of put your posting out there. When you send your emails, there are particular times in the day earlier in the week is better. And you need to monitor your results and be ready to adjust on the fly. If you're not getting something done, wait, just kind of try something different, even if it is a little off left field. This is where your organizational learning agility comes into play. And at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to hand it over to Christine to kind of drive it to the end.
Thank you, Domniki. So I'm going to jump in here and we're going to talk about defining your hiring process. Okay, this is a critical step for a couple of reasons. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to remind everyone, what is the definition of insanity? The definition of insanity is repeating the same process and expecting a different result. So if you're not getting the results that you want, it's super critical right now to define the hiring process and streamline it. I think the other reason it's important to understand the hiring process is you need to be able to shorten the hiring process as much as possible. And the hiring process really has two key objectives. Are we picking the right person or the best person for the job? Because right now we're really talking about finding the best candidate. You're going to have to do something called what I've labeled internally at Compass, making smart sacrifices. But the second element is the selection process also needs to reveal to the applicants, what is it like to work here? What are my team members going to be like? What is the work going to be like? What am I going to be doing? And what are my opportunities for growth and development? When we talk about making smart sacrifices, I'm talking about eliminating hurdles or steps in the process that do not add a lot of value and extend your time to hire. So again, two key critical factors when you're thinking about this. 33% of new hires quit their jobs in the first 90 days because the job is not what they thought it was going to be. Okay, so that is important. You don't want to just keep repeating this process and having high turnover. You want to make sure the process is allowing candidates to self-select in. And candidates also are not spending the same amount of time in the job market. They're moving relatively quickly, particularly if they're actively applying and responding to job ads. You actually have less time with those people than you do with someone who maybe you found passively through using things like LinkedIn. So think about eliminating touch points. So for example, at the end of a phone screen, if a candidate appears qualified, ask the next question, when might you be available for an in-person interview? Advise the candidates at the inception of the process, what are the steps in the selection process and what is the estimated completion time for the selection process? And ask them what their timeline is for making a decision. If that person may actually share with you, I actually have another offer I'm expecting to receive on Friday. This gives you a heads up that if you like them, you need to move quickly, or that this candidate is in all likelihood not going to be someone that you're going to move forward with in the applicant pool. So the next step, or Domniki, you can go to the next slide, is really thinking about the selection and the assessment tools. I would say probably the majority of the folks on the call, because you're involved in predictive index, you're already using PI, right? So you have your behavioral profile, which we're looking at behaviors. In this point in our recruiting efforts, if we have to make sacrifices, it makes a lot more sense to sacrifice a skill over a behavior. You also have the cognitive, which gives you a sense of learning agility. and the amount of time or types of support someone is going to need to come up to speed. So eliminate in-person interviews when something can be accomplished on a video call or a phone screen. Think about where in the selection process you may need to ask your candidates about their vaccination status, and is this a business requirement based on, you're 100 or more employees, you're in healthcare, or in order for candidates to be on client job sites, they need to be vaccinated. So what are some of the best practices? Plan your interview guides and your checklists in advance. That way, if you need to conduct multiple interviews on the same day, you can use different interviewers or different people on the team to screen, initially review applicants and screen applicants and get the same quality result. Think about the assessments cost, right? So many of the applicant tracking systems already have built-in tools for assessing customer service, Word skills, Excel skills. You can turn those features on when you're setting up your job posting, and most of those assessments are relatively short and timely for candidates to complete. This is really not the job market to have an extremely lengthy or cumbersome assessment tool. And again, for those of you using PI, we know that the behavioral assessment takes 6 to 10 minutes to complete. The cognitive assessment is a timed assessment of 12 minutes, and you're getting a lot of good, strong data about making applicant decisions. So what happens now when we're in the process and we need to make final decisions on our candidates? So you have your job application, you've done your resume review, you have your screens, your assessments, you have the results of your candidate interviews and the in-depth assessments that you've done on them. Use this evidence. Some evidence may weigh stronger in your mind than others. So to give you some examples of what I've worked with, some of our clients that are using the cognitive assessment, sometimes I find that when they create the job profile, they overestimate what that person's level of cognitive ability may need to be. When they've taken this person through an interview and they've done strong behavioral-based interviewing and there's consensus amongst hiring managers that this person would be a good fit, has the knowledge, and has responded to questions well with data points, then cognitive is just a piece of data. You can choose to use it or not to use it. And it may not weight as heavily as other factors, as how someone communicates and interacts, depending on the type of job. You're also going to need to understand that in this market, again, we're making smart sacrifices. It's certainly much easier to train someone on a particular skill or to get them maybe a computer certification than to try to change a behavior. So if you're looking at the behavioral factors and someone needs to be very comfortable with a strong amount of change, right? Comfortable with change, comfortable with ambiguity, that behavioral profile is going to be critical in making that assessment on the job. And you can probably train them in a skill or an experience that may be missing. For some of you, you need to have somebody in that seat answering that phone or responding to questions. You can certainly make a decision that you're going to take a risk on a hire. Maybe they will work out, maybe they're on the cusp, and continue to look and see, is it possible to find a better qualified applicant, or is this the best person that I'm going to find at this particular time in the hiring decision? So now we're to the point where we're extending the offer. As much as we've all gone remote during Zoom, the extension of a job offer is a personal and what I think should be a human experience. It should be a positive. the person that's extending the offer should be a close manager, someone that can really affirm that they're looking forward to having the person on the team, can extend a warm welcome, but also has some support for answering critical questions. So maybe sometimes HR and the hiring manager need to do this together. I mean, we have another participant that said, benefits are really very important right now. So this is at the point of extending an offer where we really need to make sure our offer letters are clear, the language is clear, how much paid time off is someone eligible for, when do benefits begin, and make sure that those questions are answered. Again, don't want someone accept job and within the first 90 days realizing benefits are twice as much than what they can afford, or they aren't going to have the paid time off that they need to fulfill family or work-life obligations. Background checks. Most of the states have strongly regulated pre-employment background checks. You also want to make sure that you're only doing what's absolutely necessary. With an eye that resumes are advertisements. So it's not unusual for people to misrepresent work history, level of education, and misrepresenting credentials and licenses. So those are the things that you should be checking. If you have 2 or 3 top candidates and you want to accelerate the process, I would really start some of those pre-employment checks on licenses and background prior to the extension of an offer. Most of the states that have background check regulation will not allow you to do any type of a criminal investigation prior to the extension of a job offer. Onboarding. This is another area where it's absolutely critical that we are not sacrificing the attention that we're paying to the onboarding process. This is really where the rubber hits the road and where we see a lot of our clients make mistakes. So give yourself enough time to have their workstation, their IT equipment, their setup, their key card, their punch-in, time clock, all set up and ready to go on day one, so that person feels welcomed, feels planned for. And there's really 3 steps in an onboarding plan. We have pre-arrival, right? So that's where we're getting ready for that person, preparing the team, making sure that it's clearly defined, that the team understands the role and the responsibility and what their role is in making that person successful, getting equipment and access ready to go. Then when we have that person's first day or first week, this again is mission critical, and managers should be checking in on a regular basis. Again, if you're using the predictive index, you have that management strategy guide. Take some time to understand, how does this person want to be communicated to? Set up that structure for regular check-ins and communication and support. Assign them a buddy or a mentor that can help with things like, where do I find the phone directory? How do we do this? Give them someone who's a peer where it's safe to ask questions, and also they can take some pressure off of managers, which, in this VUCA environment also have a lot going on. And to balance that particular workload, make sure that people are provided at this point in time with the entire job description, so they do have clear understanding of their role, their responsibilities, and their goals and objectives. This is another reason why people tend to drop off in the first 90 days. But onboarding is a socialization into your organization. It's not just the new hire paperwork. So think about it as socializing that person on a holistic level, helping the team be accountable for their success, and extending that process over a 6-month period. You as a business need your people to get rapidly up to speed. And I just can't stress enough how investing in onboarding and a structured onboarding program or process is really going to reinforce with the candidate they made the right decision. They'll decide, when we all buy high ticket purchases, right? And a new job is a high ticket purchase. We start to weigh in our mind, did I make the right decision? And every day that they're coming in, they're thinking through, did I make the right decision? This candidate may actually still have job offers coming in. So you need to continuously reaffirm with them they did make the right decision and that you're glad they're there, and give them a way to get questions answered and little hurdles and obstacles taken out of their way so that they can be successful. So finally, we're just going to leave you with some overall tips. So for volatility, when hiring teams are not aligned at the inception of the search, the selection process is really elongated. It becomes confusing, and a clear objective is not provided to the candidate on what that role or responsibility will be. As far as uncertainty goes, know what your competitors are offering, but also figure out a way to track all this market data that you're getting in your conversations with candidates. What are the critical questions that people are asking in a phone screen? Make sure you have the answers. Make sure that you can provide that information and adapt. What is the compensation information that's coming in? What are people asking for? Is that something that you're able to adjust to or fluctuate to? So you're getting all this super critical market data in the selection process. Capture it, review it, and revisit it before you start your next search. Complexity. Simplify as much as possible. As humans, we like to overcomplicate things when maybe they don't need to be overcomplicated. And ambiguity. Definitely hire for fit and behaviors. Plan to train for skills or skill gaps. It's much easier and much more cost effective to teach a new hire a skill or an ability than to try to create a sense of urgency or the ability to adapt for change or create a collaborative behavioral orientation. From what we've seen, there's dramatic changes in the labor market. There's also some data to show that the labor pool is actually shrinking as the 16 to 24-year-old age group is slower to enter the labor market, and baby boomers are moving out of the labor market on a daily basis. So I think this is something that we're going to be living with going forward into the future. It's not something that even when the pandemic is officially over, that we're going to see an end to these type of challenges with our recruiting strategies. So I know we had a really important question. Someone asked a question about are people including more than just benefits and paid time off in job ads? Absolutely, yes. If you have flexible spending accounts that allow people to put money aside for daycare, childcare, medical expenses, if you have a matched volunteer program where employees are paid when they volunteer their time with a non-for-profit organization, if you are doing summer Fridays, leaving early on Fridays, or if you have any type of fun and unique benefits that you offer to people, birthday celebrations, lunch and learns, flexibility at work, the opportunity to move up and to learn and to use their skills, those are really the things that are important to people. I kind of look at benefits on like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We have food, clothing, shelter, safety, and then we can really be our true selves. So I would also include things that add to personal development, growth, work-life balance, and flexibility when you're creating your job ads.
Awesome, thank you. And to kind of tack on to that, are there any major shifts that you see beyond medical PTO? Do you see an uptick in some of those benefits that you just mentioned, or?
Well, I mean, childcare is really becoming a challenge. So we've lost a lot of females to the workforce, and as much as we think we're an enlightened society, I think women still tend to be the caregivers. So think about ways you know, to maybe change a work schedule around daycare or childcare. So if someone could work 6 to 3, you know, versus a 9 to 5, and doesn't have to pay for after school care, that could be a game changer in attracting people to the workforce. You know, even if it's a remote day, right? 1 day a week, can we work remote, or some type of flexibility? Those are huge issues that are coming up. I mean, there's all different types of insurance benefits, but the most critical factor before you start investing additional dollars in benefits is understanding what is absolutely meaningful to your demographic and helping them get help. So one of the things that we see a lot is most people are not aware that many states offer healthy child insurance programs where people can cover their children up to age 18 on a state benefit, which is the same carriers, United Healthcare, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for $60 or $80 a month with no deductible, no copay. Dental and vision are included, versus putting them on the company's health insurance, which just can't match that because it doesn't have that state subsidy tied to it. Most of those programs are very generous in that premiums are tied to earnings, but still much more affordable than putting children on group health benefits. So like those are kind of the creative digging and things that you need to explore, and then be prepared to provide that supplemental information when you're talking about the benefit offering or during benefits open enrollment.
And just to piggyback, to expand on that, it's not, you know, if you're able to give that kind of flexible work schedule, you open an additional pool of those women that opted out of the workforce or are not even looking to go in the workforce because what they will earn is offset with what they would spend in childcare. So they choose not to because there is no, the cost benefit is a wash. That presents a challenge how you reach them because they have resigned from searching. So those are not women that probably, and I'm using women, you know, I should use men as well because many men opted to stay at home and do the primary child, you know, care. Those are not people you will reach by posting ads. You have to be where those people are. Like, you know, what time does a stay-at-home mom go to the supermarket? Can I put a booth there? I gotta say, or can I use my social media in the local area to kind of get the word out on a much more community basis versus the formal job ad? So knowing your market, knowing who you go after, it really will kind of dictate the techniques or the strategies you will put in place.
Very good. Well, thank you again so much, Christine and Domniki. We've just got a few minutes over the hour here. So fantastic session, chock full of really great best practices. And one thing I loved about the way you walk through building the process is with intentionality. That's something that we kind of pride ourselves in at Predictive Index is being intentional about the way you go about hiring, building your teams, retaining your employees, and all those processes within the organization. So thanks to everyone who joined us for today's session. I will be sending out the recording to all of those who attended. And if you have any questions that we weren't able to get to, please feel free to email Christine, Domniki, myself, your PI consultant. We're happy to point you in the right direction. And we look forward to seeing you on our next monthly webinar and PI Power Boost sessions. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care.